Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you were truly challenged by a game? You probably have some vivid memories from when you were a kid about how you were stuck on a boss or level and you just kept getting so close to beating it, but you just couldn't. And then maybe after a break, a few attempts, maybe even a cry session, hey, we've all been there, you finally do it. You beat the boss and you're left with this overwhelming feeling of satisfaction. Your hands tremble with adrenaline and you feel like you accomplished something, like you made real progress, and most importantly, you feel the satisfaction of genuine improvement in your skills and your knowledge of the game. In my opinion, Sekiro is the embodiment of that feeling. From that intro, you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that I enjoy the challenge of difficulty or game modes that modify the experience of a game, something that really requires you to know the ins and outs of the gameplay. It's something I feel personally many games lack these days. Now I know what you're probably thinking right now. You looked at the title of the video and you hear me talking about challenges in video games, and you're about probably ready to beat the shit out of me because how could I not mention the king of hard games, Dark Souls. Many point to it as the hard game to play. A lot of people do.
This selection was
Jedi Fallen Order, the Dark Souls, Donkey Kong is the Dark
It's just like Dark Souls. Well, sorry about that. And I don't disagree. Dark Souls has and always will have a special place in many gamers' hearts, including myself, for giving them the same feelings of struggle and achievement, and the satisfaction that comes with it through those interplaying through gameplay. There's so much to say about Dark Souls that continuing to talk about it would just be another video in this video about Dark Souls. So to stay on topic, I feel that there's just a few key differences in their approach to game design that set Sekiro just a little bit tad above Dark Souls in terms of satisfying game challenges, for me at least. You see, Sekiro's combat isn't just good. It's really good. Everything from the pacing of the fights to the incredible sounds of the clashing of metal from each katana, parrying and striking, ending with the triumphant sound of a successful death blow. It all creates this incredible atmosphere of an intense battle. In fact, I would say it's probably one of the best feeling games in terms of combat I've ever played. And it's one that constantly tries to strengthen the player through breaking one's own current limits. Now, if that ain't some fucking anime protagonist shit, I don't know what is. Every encounter, you need to be taking something from the exchange, either through parrying and counterattacking, or straight up getting in your enemy's face and giving him a hard slap. Unlike in Dark Souls, turtling up and only blocking or trying to tank the damage isn't a valid strategy. The enemies, especially the more active ones beyond the opening hours of the game, will wear down your posture with just a few attacks. And once your posture is broken, you're completely open to their brutal punishment. In Sekiro, battle is a constant exchange of blows with your enemy, with most of the actual fights requiring you to not defeat your enemy by wearing down their health, but instead by breaking their posture, by finding gaps in their combos and weaknesses in their abilities. It's like a true crazy anime sword fight.
ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。せっかく祖父のジョセフが私のザワールドの正体を試験終了チャイム直前まで問題を解いている受験生のような必死こいた気分で教えてくれたというのに。近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんでな。ほうほう。では十分近づくがよい。
The spirit of combat is reinforced by the game's progression system. If you're a fan of Dark Souls, you're probably thinking that it also fits that idea. And I agree, it's not the best example, but just bear with me. We all know that FromSoft is big brain. Unlike the other Souls games, however, where you were acquiring an in-game currency, i.e. souls, or for us true edgelords, blood, these could be used to not only purchase items, but upgrade your character's stats. Sekiro takes away the ability of that choice to strengthen yourself through the currency. In the Soulsborne games, it was always a constant choice the player had to make. Empower your character, or supply yourself with upgraded gear or valuable items that could be used to unlock shortcuts or needed healing items. You know the good old trusty leveling system, where each level gave you a nice boost to your stat and thus damage or health. Whatever you damn well please, you're the player. But in Sekiro, you can't just buy levels with the currency. Only items and upgrades to your shinobi prosthetic. We'll come back to that. Sekiro lays down a new law, and that is, the only way to become stronger is to overcome the obstacles before you. Oh yeah, that's right. You can't just grind your way to victory. The only way to win is to truly win and best your opponent. Now, if your holy shit, that super cool alarm isn't going off yet, then something is wrong. Because this progression system, in a sense, allows the player to achieve true victory. They can't just grind up levels and come back with the power to hit for 200% more crit. Come on, I'm guilty of it too. I know you are as well. We've all brute forced our way through challenges in games rather than to try to understand them completely. No shame in it, but what makes this game special to me is how it takes that ability away from the player. You can't brute force your way through most of the challenges in this game. You have to understand the boss and its mechanics. You need to understand the abilities you have and come back more knowledgeable, with better reflexes, and maybe a bit more tools in your arsenal. The only way to increase your attack power is to defeat the main bosses and meditate on your harrowing battle with them. The only way to upgrade your health and thus how many hits you can take is by defeating mini-boss type enemies throughout the game that are there specifically to test your skills in between the main bosses. Killing them gets you a prayer bead, getting 4 beads makes you a nice little necklace that you can wear around town, and the only way you're going to make that health bar any bigger is by wearing those necklaces around town. Is your holy shit, this is badass alarm going off yet? You have to live the shonen anime dream. No, you better believe it. Sword combat, progression, and now the third leg on what I'm dubbing the economic stool of Sekiro's badassery, prosthetics. Now, as I said before, you can't make yourself stronger no matter how hard you grind. However, the genius exception to that rule is that by exploring the world, you're able to find shinobi prosthetics. See, our main ninja had a little bit of an accident while babysitting. But it turns out that's for the best, because in exchange for his arm, he's gifted probably the most broken item in the game's world, the shinobi prosthetic. Okay, real talk. This completely breaks the main character by seemingly removing the upper limit of his badassery. And it's the conduit through which you can perform some of the coolest moves in the game. This is what I would say completes the combat and sets it apart from its predecessors. It's no wonder that the very first reveal of the game focused on it. It's become a symbol of the game with both of the main covers, putting it on display. While upgrading the prosthetic and finding new tools for it isn't making Wolf stronger stat-wise, it's making the player stronger with more options to tackle the bosses, with some pretty obvious uses and counters to some of the moves the enemies and bosses have. Sorry Grandma Butterfly, but I can throw shit real good now. Oh, Genichiro, you want to show me your shitty Zeus cosplay? What if I use my substitution jutsu and throw the lightning right back at your fucking face? So, there is an argument to be had that coming back with a different tool could make a fight easier. But it really comes down to the player's use of it. I've watched other people play and have the right tools for the right job, but just not use it effectively. And in my own playthrough, I didn't find a lot of the tools right away, and thus relied on using Wolf's Katana the majority of my playtime. This prosthetic isn't a be-all end-all, but when used effectively in combat, it's almost mesmerizing to watch. I sometimes find myself looking at videos just of people who have been able to master the combat and weave together moves from both the sword and prosthetic that I never even considered, and just pull off some of the craziest kills and clears I've seen in no time flat. Editor's note, because at this point I've realized I haven't talked about skill points or techniques, and I'm wearing different clothes because time has passed and we've all grown from this experience. Skill points can be acquired by killing enemies, i.e. the method I just mentioned before, but they sort of fall under the same umbrella as the prosthetics. While some of the attacks can be powerful, they don't increase Wolf stat-wise, and they use the same resource as the prosthetic. So in the end, you end up only being able to use a few attacks or getting a passive buff to your health gain or stealth. I personally never felt like having a technique instantly won me a fight. It was something I still had to understand and know how to use effectively for the right situation and right time in a fight. The end result and the stool upon which we can rest our weary bodies, when it all comes together, creates an incredibly intense combat situation. A situation you're only able to overcome with your own skills and your own knowledge of the game, which you've been fostering throughout your whole playthrough. Now, since we are oh so comfortable on our little stool, I want to talk about some bosses. While most of the boss battles are incredible, there are just some gems, in my opinion, that I always enjoy playing, and are fights that I feel really define everything I love about the game, combining not only the badassery of the combat and progression, but also mixes with the story elements that just hit so different. I want to talk about the Genichiro, Owl, and final Sword Saint fight. Genichiro, like our main character Wolf, was an orphan of war, but he was adopted by good old Grandpa Ashina. Finally feeling like he has a place he can belong, he sees the country as more of an adopted parent to him. So when Ishin starts getting a little old and a little sick, and the Interior Ministry starts to sneak in, he gets desperate to save it. And that's the reason why he clashes with us by kidnapping our lord for his immortal power. It makes him the perfect rival and test marker for you throughout the game, being introduced early as an incredibly impossible obstacle that you will have to eventually overcome. By the time you reach his second battle, you've grown stronger and bested some pretty powerful opponents depending on the route you've taken. With this, you're able to push him to his brink and actually defeat him, taking vengeance on him for not only shaming you and kidnapping your lord, but taking your arm in the battle as well. By the time you reach the end of the game and face him for the first phase of the final fight, you've grown so much from all of your struggles up until this point, you're most likely able to best him without much effort at all, knowing his strengths and weaknesses pretty well at this point. He works so well as a mirror to our character, part of me wishes he was actually just the final boss of the game. I say that while also knowing that weakens my last example. While Ishin saved Geni from being a war orphan, Owl is the one that saved us, becoming the main character's father and mentor figure. Wolf initially believes him to be dead throughout the main present timeline of the story, but around the halfway mark after you pick up the Mortal Blade, he just shows up, like it's no big deal. But turns out he wants the immortal power. Yikes. Turns out being old sucks, and he's sort of sick of not being in his prime anymore. He wants you to betray your lord and join him. And in such an endearing moment for me, Wolf refuses him. Wolf decides to walk his own path, and Owl isn't happy, and he isn't willing to pull any punches. In his fight, he turns your usual strategies and tactics on their head with his ability to counter and even use some of your own shinobi abilities. Which makes sense. He is the ninja master that trained you. It's a hard-fought battle until you get to know how he'll respond to certain situations. Ichimonji is king though. Once defeated, he gives you the ability to peer into his memories and confront him once again, but this time in his prime, and this time with the understanding that all along he was the one that betrayed you years ago and set up all the events that took place. It's a powerful fight against a powerful opponent, with him living up to his name with his own summoning jutsu. And what I find truly interesting is that with his defeat in both encounters, Wolf and him still regard each other with this sense of warmth and pride. It's a powerful moment when a very strong opponent that has given you a lot of grief acknowledges you. And that, I feel, is the biggest emotion you take away with the final boss of the game. The Sword Saint himself, Isshin Ashina.
Sekiro.
Now, to understand how awesome and hyped this battle is, I feel I need to add a little more context as to who Isshin is as a character in the game. Isshin is a guy who led a rebellion against the Interior Ministry to essentially gain the territory of Ashina. He is seen as a warrior unparalleled to the point where even though during the time of the game he's sick and old, his existence alone is what keeps the threat of an invasion at bay. He even shadows as the Tengu of Ashina, an NPC you occasionally meet throughout your journey. By doing his questline, you're given access to some of the most powerful techniques in the game. In fact, the only way to unlock the final tier list of skills is through this questline. While under any normal circumstances you would think he would consider you nothing but an enemy, he actually treats you with respect. He even makes it clear he doesn't care for what his adopted grandson is doing, and has only ever really cared about the art of war and the honor of battle. If you speak to him after you defeat Genichiro and Owl, he commends you both times for fighting for what you think is the right path. He's the dude that says the coolest and truest fact I've ever heard in Sekiro. Hesitation is defeat. He's just so cool. Yeah, so he's sort of a big deal until he just dies at the end because of his illness. Now with Isshin dead, Ashina's invasion truly begins, and thus in an attempt to save his homeland, Genichiro tries one last time to force the Divine Heir to his side and kill you using your Mortal Blade's opposite, the Black Mortal Blade. After being swiftly defeated for the final time, however, he uses his own Mortal Blade to resurrect his grandfather in an immortal form at his absolute peak in exchange for his life. Isshin returns as the Sword Saint, one who has mastered combat to a degree that is literally god tier. Quick and relentless slashes with his katana, powerful guard-breaking moves that leave aftershocks in the air, wide sweeps and long-distance thrusting with his spear, and if you're too far away, he's able to use fast, repeated projectiles from a gun that probably shouldn't exist in the time period, as well as gaining the ability to throw lightning like his grandson. Sword Saint Ishin is nothing other than the benchmark to test your skills as a final boss. Everything I have talked about in this video, for me, comes to a culmination when I reach this fight. I remember beating him for the first time after many attempts, and just feeling this incredible surge of adrenaline. I remember that my hands were shaking and that my heart was racing. I needed a moment to catch my breath. I felt like it was a truly harrowing challenge, and I really completed something great when I finished the game. And few games have been able to truly offer me that sort of experience.
Sekiro.
So in conclusion, I love Sekiro. Whole video was pretty much just so I could talk about how much I love Sekiro and the bosses. But if you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. Thank you. This is my first attempt at a video like this, and this idea has been in the back of my mind for like a year, since before Sekiro won Game of the Year of 2019. But hey, better late than never. Subscribe for more, and thank you.